Hey, this is Dave from MetalEpidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review. What's up guys, Dave here from Metal Epidemic, back with another album review. And for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from the Sydney deathcore band To The Grave. The band's new album Epilogue will be released on April 16th via Unique Leader Records. After releasing the No Lives Matter EP and touring Australia relentlessly with the likes of Alpha Wolf, Justice for the Damned and Grave Mind, To The Grave emerged in 2019 with their darkest offering to date, their album Global Warning, closing 2019 as the main support for Vulvodynia on their Australian run saw record numbers for the band, including sold out headline shows in Melbourne and Sydney. So, when this came in, I looked at the press release and I noticed the album had 18 tracks. And I was a bit like, that's a wee bit excessive for a deathcore album, to be honest. The runtime on this is 63 minutes. But I should have probably read the press release in full before jumping to conclusions. I did, yes, absolutely.
Pulling the Duncan, yes, yeah.
This is technically a previously released album plus an extra 7 songs. So Epilogue features a remixed and remastered version of the 2019 album Global Warning and 7 new songs that were created in 2020. So although it clocks in at over an hour, it's technically like an album plus an EP of new songs, I suppose. But I hadn't heard the previous album at all anyway, so this was basically like an hour of material that I hadn't heard before. I did go and listen to the 2019 version.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to. I think like original were like that. How do we review this? Do we just do the new songs? And I'm like, for contextual purposes, we kind of have to listen to the old. I don't often go back and listen to bands' old material that they've been sneaky here. They've just packaged it up, so I have to. So totally well played, To The Grave.
I was curious to see if there was any kind of like huge changes in terms of the remix and the remaster. I'd say it definitely sounds fuller than the original. The new mix has a bit more of a kind of bite to it. You can see it's been tweaked just ever so slightly to kind of brighten up some of the instrumentation. I think it has made a difference. If you listen to them side by side, you will hear a difference in the two. In terms of that album, it's a tight, kind of technical, punchy deathcore album that if you've never heard it, then this is the perfect time to check out, to be honest, because even though it was released in 2019, you've got that kind of incentive of the remix and remaster, so it's probably worth getting your hands on when it drops. But it's been out for 2 years, so I'm not going to go into major detail on it. I'd rather talk about the 7 new tracks on Epilogue. Did you check out Global Warning then as well?
So I just as in terms of check this album out. So the whole thing. Okay. So I listened to this album in its entirety, all 19 tracks.
Right. Okay.
It's worth saying that the 19th track is a cover of a My Chemical Romance song.
Yes, it is.
Which, by the way, I'm going to put my cards on the table. I fucking love that album that it's taken from, and I actually did not think anyone could deathcore that song up, and they proved me wrong, and they actually do surprisingly well with it.
Yeah, because the track isn't mentioned on the press release at all.
Yep.
So it's like I thought it was 18 tracks, but when I downloaded it, I was like, wait, there's 19 tracks on this one.
Slipped it in there. I don't know if that's
they absolutely did.
I don't know if that's because they're like, maybe no one will take us seriously if we mention my. I'm like, fucking. Whether you like emo or not, My Chemical Romance are really fucking good at what they do. So I'm not their biggest fan, but they're really fucking good at what they do. And I actually really like The Ghost of You. I think it's a good song anyway. But they give it the. I hate cover songs that just sound like the originals. We've talked about this before. This is not. This is so fucking heavy. It's such a heavy version of it. It just tickles me to think that like Gerard Way's sitting there writing season fucking 3 of the Umbrella Men or whatever it is, Umbrella Academy, and he's like, oh, someone's covered their song, and putting on just being like, Like, deer in the headlights, fucking trauma. It's that sort of level of heaviness that if you contracted Bell's palsy right after hearing it, that's the right thing. You know, half your face kind of starts drooping down to the side. It's that sort of level of condition. Yeah, so in answer to your question, yes, I listened to the first part. Interestingly enough, I think, and we'll see what you think, less on the production-wise, but songwriting-wise, I think there is a definite split between the new songs and the old songs. All right, we're on the same page. So. Cool.
I'd say so. Cool. Yeah, in terms of the new ones, I'd definitely say those tracks have more of a kind of sinister edge to them than the Global Warning material does. That album had elements of it kind of lurking about in the background. Tracks like Slaughter Forever or The Devil in Sheepskin, you could hear it on those tracks, but right from the kind of get-go on these new tracks, it was far more prevalent. From a kind of guitar work perspective, the kind of background atmosphere and vocally as well, it felt kind of darker overall, not just the kind of the gutturals and the screams. There were little bits of kind of like almost like kind of tonal melody on tracks like Miserable Summer. So that also kind of sounds quite menacing when it's combined with that kind of murkier guitar work. I also felt like the newer material was kind of pushing more of the kind of slightly techier sound of the band. There are moments on tracks like Wreck where they really kind of ramp up the kind of tech metal and the kind of gentier side of the band. And I think that's a good move, to be honest, because my main concern with this release was that they might not get out from under the shadows of bands that are already doing the kind of ominous deathcore thing, you know what I mean? Like Your Distance and like Humanity's Last Breath, who are kind of really pushing that like bleak sound. But the fact that they're not opposed to going down a more kind of progressive and technical route on certain tracks, I think that certainly helps keep them in a separate lane almost from those bands. Also felt it sounded more focused, these new tracks. Like they've really kind of sharpened up their writing skills, a little bit more attention into the kind of structure of the tracks as well. I noticed that most probably on Kill Shelter, it has a kind of very kind of dread-filled kind of atmosphere on it. Reminded me a little bit of Brand of Sacrifice actually, but the structure was probably one of the more kind of simpler of the 7 new tracks. But I kind of liked that. I thought that the different rhythms and styles really complemented the overall feel of the track. And it was one of the tracks that kind of stuck in my head afterwards. Whereas there were a couple of the new tracks which I liked musically, had some really cool riffs, but weren't quite as memorable overall. And then obviously you've got The Ghost of You right at the end. I am not a My Chemical Romance fan at all. And at first, when that track first kicked in, I didn't even clock that it was a cover at first. I was like, what is this? I was like, it sounds different. It definitely sounds lighter than the rest of the material. And then I was like, wait a minute, there's something fucking going on here. So I was like Googling it, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, My Chemical Romance. But I actually really liked it. Their cover is really good. Again, a more straightforward kind of arrangement, you know, but I loved their kind of heavier take on the song. A little bits of percussion in the beginning and the background sounds as well, really cool. So in terms of covers, actually it's a pretty good job they did on that one. This is a long album though. It is 63 minutes, as I mentioned. And I'm not going to lie, I did find it a bit of a struggle to do in one sitting. It didn't help that I listened to the previous version of the album as well. And to be honest, Global Warning is a good album. Not necessarily anything that I haven't heard done before, but I do prefer the direction they're going in with the new material. Again, not going to reinvent the genre in any kind of way, but it delivers the heaviness in spades. And as a band, they do sound like they are evolving, so I think they are going in the right direction. I'm going to go back on something I said in the previous review, but as much as I don't like EPs,
here it comes.
I kind of think this would have been better as a 7-track EP. I think rather than tacking it on to kind of Global Warning, I think they could have released that album separately as a remix and remaster. And the 7 songs, the new songs, would have probably suited a kind of EP structure. You know, it kind of stood better on their own. Because for me personally, I was getting a bit kind of fatigued. By the time I hit the new material, I was a bit like, we need a bit of a break here. But that's just my take on it. I think I would have split them up personally. but just my opinion. Duncan, what did you think of Epilogue by To The Grave?
I don't disagree with the fatigue and exhaustion. This is it's an album that for all does have elements that kind of sway into kind of more ominous and at times weird atmospheric stuff in the background. It is uncompromising in its degree of heaviness from start to finish. And an hour and 3 minutes of that just constantly is, I mean, it's too much. So if Distant decide to release a 19-track album, Dave, it's your fault. I'm with you on this one. I can kind of see why they've done it though. I mean, this album was written 2019, so you would imagine they would go tour in 2020. Guess what happened in 2020? I get a feeling it's probably they've not done what they wanted in terms of a tour cycle and all the rest. So I imagine they've used their 2020 to craft new songs, and rather than release an EP and then you're already, well, what they're going to do next. There's a part of me that sees the weird logic of, well, we'll just beef up the release with these new tracks in here. The second half of the album, the additional 7 songs, are far more interesting in my opinion. I think they do feel like they spent a lot more time crafting the songs. I don't think it falls into some of the trappings that deathcore as a genre has in general. There are some of those earlier songs that, I mean, they're great listens to, but you can almost, 5 seconds before the punishing breakdown comes in, say, and 5, 4, 3, 2, and go. There is a formula to those songs, and they craft it well. The elements that they add in the background, specifically some of the stuff the vocalist does. The vocalist has a tone as well where he gets to a certain point and then he just finds another level below. And there's a tone that he hits, I swear to God, if you're suffering constipation, put a speaker on your belly. It's like there's a growly, gravelly tone that he hits. He doesn't overuse it as well, which I love about that, because that to me is a special something that he's bringing. Where he could do it on every song, on every fucking crushing bit, and it would just become, that's their gimmick. The fact he just slips into every now and again is really, really, really well done. Production on it is clinical to within a fault. Once again, I think the drums are slightly high in the mix, if I'm being honest. It's a very, very drum heavy album, but that just adds to the weight. The drum production on it is fucking punishing.
I think a lot of the kind of more modern deathcore bands are going that way as well.
Impact. To me, it makes sense. It's Impact. You want the person that's listening to it to really fucking get into that the pounding feel of it. You have the drums front and centre, and that's what they have here. Their drummer is a fucking tank as well. Really, 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 really good drummer. But yeah, the kind of newer songs are where the excitement came for me. You mentioning techier elements. I just think they're just more experimental. I think they're more daring and willing to try things which are breaking the formula of the first half. So I think if you were listening to this without all the backstory, I think you would feel that when you got to a second part that it was either a concept album or a double album, because it does feel like there's a definitive divide between the two sides of it. I love the cover. I think the cover's one of the better covers, heavier covers of a song I've heard this year. But then again, I like that album. Not all albums by My Chemical Romance, I want to stress, but I do like that album. I do really like that song, and I like the personality and spin they put in it for themselves. It works really, really, really well. So I'm kind of with you. We're in a weird quandary here, and the quandary is this is a full album that has been given them for review. So I'm going to have to review based on a full album, whereas I think if it was more, like you were saying, the new songs tagged on as a separate release, this probably would score a bit higher for me, but in the context of the whole album, my grade will reflect that. But yeah, if you have not exhausted yourself with the waves of kind of dissonant, discordant, disgusting, bleak sounding deathcore band, and you've never heard of these guys before, get them listened to. And once again, another great example that Australia just have a murderer's row. I don't know what that term means, but they've got a murderer's row of fucking bands out there that are, slowly starting to blip their way into our radar. And when I hear them, I'm just like, there's something about that country that just breeds really fucking insanely talented musicians. And they all seem to find themselves in bands together. So it's not like, that band sounds shit, but their drummer's shit hot. You know what I mean? It's they just all seem to find themselves in groups. So you can swing it round to the question I know you want to ask.
Okay. Rating wise for the new album from To the Grave, Epilogue, I think for me, I'm going to go in at a 3.5. As I say, as a whole package, Epilogue, it's over an hour long, and I did find it a bit of I wouldn't say a struggle, but I was a bit exhausted by the time I got to the new material. I was just kind of a bit spent. So for me personally, I think I would have split the two of them up, but I see why they've done it, because the kind of production of the new stuff is kind of produced the same way as the remix and remaster sounds very similar, so they do flow well into each other, even though the 7 tracks, have their differences. And if you've never heard of the band before, then it is probably the perfect time to check them out when they're re-releasing this with the remix, remaster plus the 7 songs. I understand that. But overall, I'd probably go 3.5. Looking forward to hearing what they do next, though. Obviously they've had a bit of time with the COVID thing. They've tracked these 7 songs, so hopefully we get to hear a bit more of them and be doing a full length of new stuff, because I do like the way they were kind of moving towards the kind of sound they were kind of pushing towards in the newer tracks. What did you think? What did you rate this one?
Yeah, I'm coming in the same as you. I think the new tracks as a standalone would have got 4 from me. I think I'd knock it down to 0.5 purely because I think it's far too long. For this genre of music, there's no, prog albums should be over an hour in length. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That makes sense. Deathcore albums should not be over an hour in length. It's just, there should be a law somewhere that says no. When you're in the studio, the producer should be rolling up a newspaper and hitting you in the nose and saying, "Bad, go lie down." It's just too long. Yeah. I'd be surprised if the band don't feel that way as well. I don't know how much of this is the band's decision and how much of this might be a label saying, "You just put it together, we repackage it, we re-release it." And you get more, because it just feels, I can't imagine, because originally, it's the weird thing about it is when you release an album, that's your album, and it runs at the length that you've set it to, and it works within that confine. Generally what you get is with 1 or 2 unreleased tracks, which are the things that didn't make, and the actual clinical process is sitting down and killing your darlings. There's a couple of songs that don't make it because you're like, it just kind of maybe takes the direction away from it. So you have a complete package that sounds the best version of that. To then tag on 7 songs, which are written a year later, I think from a band's perspective, they'll know that. Not that I think they will ever listen to this review, but I'm with Dave. I think off the basis of those last 7 songs in particular, when the next album swings around, you have me at day 0. I'm more than excited to check it out, because there are elements in here that I kind of think makes them stand out from the other bands that you mentioned, whether it's Distant or Humanity's Last Breath or all the unique leader stuff that's currently consuming that part of the genre sphere. I think there's lots to appreciate in here, specifically in the later half. I found the first bit indicative of a lot of music that's in that genre. The second half seemed to be where they were really kind of trying to craft a sound which was more them.
Yep.
So, 3.5. It was a long way to get a 3.5, but I thought I should quantify it before the guys listen to it and they're like, "Who is this fucking cunt?" And for some reason, I've made them sound like a fucking Ray Winston on helium. I don't know where that came from, or something Australian. There we go.
This one drops on the 16th of April on Unique Leader Records. It's called Epilogue. And if you want to check the band out, it is facebook.com/tothegraveau for Australia. I will put a link in the description below to their Facebook and any pre-orders or pre-saves of the album in there as well. Thanks for checking out the review. Much appreciated. We'll be back with another review very soon. But until then, take care. I'll speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.